Okay, so welcome to this podcast of the World Tribal Alliance. I'm here with two very dear friends, Ánde Somby and Craig Foster. Ánde is our representative from the north. He is a cultural practitioner of the Sami people. He is a doctor, he has a doctorate in the law, and has dedicated his life to representing the interests of indigenous people and specifically his people up in the Arctic Circle. Ánde came down to South Africa and blessed us all with his presence, shared some of his incredible yoiking, which I'm going to put some quiet pressure on him to share with us today on this call, and was just an absolute delight to be around. Thank you for joining us, Ánde.
Thank you so much for the introduction.
It's my pleasure. Craig Foster, I don't think needs much introduction to our listeners. He's one of my closest friends. He's been an enormous support to the World Tribal Alliance. And the reason we were in South Africa was because of his inspiring conversation with Mahanji around the origin of our species. Craig has dedicated his life to preserving the ancient sea forest down around where he's always called home. And also in working with the indigenous, specifically in the Kalahari, but all around the world. You may know him from his wonderful film, My Octopus Teacher, and his most recent book, Amphibious Soul, which I've just finished, and it's a life changer, so definitely recommend that. Welcome, Brother Craig. Welcome.
So great to be here with you, Dominic, and wonderful to see you, Ánde. Exciting to talk to both of you.
What I'd like to start with, Ánde, is what you were sharing just before we started the call around how you are now entering, I think, what you described as blue time. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, it's called Skama in Sami language. And it's the time of the year when the sun doesn't appear over the horizon. The sky becomes more and more blue. The 1st of December, we have the darkest day of the year. And then you have this cobalt blue that is almost unimaginable, this blueness that you can see, this deep, deep color. So it's a beautiful and meditative time.
And a bit chilly, I imagine.
Yeah, the traditional way to think about that is that the world is some kind of a ball that is hanging in a rope. And for each day when it becomes a little bit darker, then one of the fibers of that rope goes off. So at the end of the 21st of December, then the world is hanging in just one fiber. So it's the darkest day of the year is the day when we have to be very silent and to move very slowly, speak very slowly. But it can also be a way to organize your inner world that the darkness makes you so vulnerable that your world is hanging in one fiber, and that you have to be conscious about that and organize yourself accordingly. So it's a kind of multidimensional perception.
And well, thank you for sharing those stories. You are such a wonderful storyteller. We all benefited enormously from that down in South Africa. One more question on this, because I've always found it fascinating. What does it do you feel, to your perception of time when the sun doesn't rise? Because there's obviously a lot of feeling across various philosophical traditions that time is a construct of our minds and it doesn't exist in the way maybe that we think it does. And I imagine when the sky looks the same for 2 or 3 months of the year, it might start to alter how we perceive reality itself on some level. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. So it brings us in a meditative space. So, but we live in a very dramatic place because mid-May and until some 20th of July, then we have an intensive period where there is light all the day. And it's also a huge party going on. So because it's light day and night, so you have a lot of plants having their huge party, and then you have all these insects that are flying. So it's so full of life, and then you get the migratory birds who come there and they feast on the insects, and then they sing day and night. So it's so intense and full of life then this period. So and we then have both the silent time as we have now, where we have sounds like when you walk on snow, for example, then a step on the snow, it's almost like a micro concert. It lasts for a split of a second, but it has its own dramaturgy and its own soundscape. So you notice such things, and we used to joke that one of the hardest human rights abuses to a Sami man is that you break his silence, because we oftentimes we communicate through silence. I had one neighbor in the village where I grew up. So the last time I saw him, I went and visited him at his home. And I came into the house and he poured some coffee to me. We sat on each side of the table. We sat there for like half an hour, and no, we didn't break our silence. So then I then took my jacket and went out, and it was I of course didn't know then that was the last time we saw each other, but it's still a very beautiful memory that I have of this we call a neighbor a sida Guemi, with my sida Guemi and me, that we had that wonderful meeting where we enjoyed the silence that we had together without breaking it. So it's one of the expressions of confidence to another person, that if you can stay with that person and be silent and not break the silence.
Wow. And it's what I love most about that story is that both of you understood the rules of the game. You both came in and were like, this is no need to explain what's going on here. It's felt exchange. I think I'd like to hear from Craig on that. I think that's Craig's absolutely ideal scenario of social exchange. just nothing to say. Craig, what are your thoughts on that?
It's just such an amazing image to imagine Ánde going in there, the coffee pouring, and just absolutely, there's no question of a single word passing. It's very beautiful. It's not something that I'm very familiar with in the human context, but obviously, every day I'm in the Great African Sea Forest and visiting these animals that I'm very familiar with, and it's kind of a similar scenario. There's no there's no verbal communication, but there's an enormous amount of other communication that goes on, and that is extremely profound. So it's wonderful to hear it in a human context. I'd not thought of doing that, but I think I'm going to try and set up a cup of coffee or cup of tea with a friend and persuade them to say nothing. Be nice.
Yeah. Yeah. I have even heard a very, very beautiful story about that. There were a friend of mine who was situated in Bergen. He was studying economics, and then he was diagnosed with cancer. And then there were two other Sami boys who were also in Bergen there. They were also studying economics. And they used to come to his hospital room there. And they understood that in that situation that the friend didn't have that much energy. But they came every day to his room, and then they drank coffee there, and they did their homework there, and then they went home. And this friend, he recovered and got healthy, and he is now a grandfather, a happy grandfather. So everything went well with him. But his story is that this presence of these friends was maybe the thing that gave him the energy and the urge to continue to be alive and to take the battle against the disease. And in those days, such a diagnosis was a very, very dramatic piece of information to get. So it could be, you could easily start to give up.
And were they silent when they went to see him?
Yeah, they were silent all the time. So
Amazing.
they didn't exchange a word there with him, but they were there, and they were drinking coffee and just being there.
Fabulous.
So
that's something that sorry, Ánde,
yeah.
go on.
Yeah, and I agree with Greg, because if we think of small band communication and broadband communication, so to be silent together is such a broadband communication that you exchange so much information there with that you can be silent together. So we are coming closer to this period of time when we oftentimes also are in silence.
I think it's really wonderful that Mother Nature's orchestrated your part of the world in a way that insists upon going into these periods of meditative contemplation. I think it's probably deeply beneficial for the collective consciousness of your people. Something that in the south of where you are, I mean, growing up in the UK, there is just this insistence upon noise and thought and productivity, and I think it wreaks havoc on our nervous systems and on how we see the world, because we get so lost in, again, this idea of productivity. I'm sure it's challenging, but I really love the idea that your whole community is kind of in some ways forced into understanding the importance of presence and silence and contemplation by nature itself. I think that's really, and it's something that I feel, and some of the people who attended our gathering, including Matthias, feels was one of the positive effects of the COVID-19 experience that we all had, was that we were forced into isolation, into these meditative scenarios with all of our triggers, right? All of our family, all of our mirrors. and forced to sit in that for a couple of years. And I actually think there was a lot of good came from that. But thank you for sharing what you shared. It's lovely to see it from that perspective. A lot of people would see it as a negative, to think that you don't see the sun for so long. But there's very clearly a huge positive to it. Just in the fact that, I just love the fact that, you know, you went to your neighbor's house, that, as Craig mentioned, the coffee's on, and there was just this implicit understanding that we're going to maybe sit through the initial bumpy mind activity of, are we really just not going to speak? And then drift into that beautiful state of presence and connection, that, like you said, that broadband felt communication, which is so much more fulfilling, I'm sure, and nourishing than just the words that our mind is able to come up with. I think it's really great. I love that as an example. Thank you for sharing.
I think that one of the aspects of that is that we are somehow each other's mirrors. Every human is a mirror for the other. So that can be a way to, for example, to mirror yourself. But if you see that so clearly when you are silent together, that you see so much more of yourself in the other person there. So it's a fascinating thing, and you also get to be conscious about that. Also, when you are in more noisy social settings, that one aspect of being together with other people is that you always have one way to connect with people is that you start to see yourself in the person whom you are interacting with, and then you get a productive kind of confidences that are make it so fruitful to meet people.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, it can be scary too, right? I mean, one time you reminded me of an occasion with my wife where we went to where there's a lake near us, and a man came to wash our car, and he was not in a very good place. And I remember feeling the inclination to sort of help him financially. And I went to get some money for him. And then I had this very deep, I don't know, awareness in me that by me assuming the position of the helper, I was actually in some way making his situation worse. And so something in me told me just to really look into his eyes and, like you're sharing, really become him, imagine, fully embody the scenario that he's in as if that were me. And it was a very, very emotional thing. And I really got very emotional, and so did he. And then I was able to assist him as if I was assisting myself. And it became a really pure exchange. And I think I benefited much more than he did from it. But that's a really, I think, important lesson that you've just shared about really looking for ourselves and each other, because I do believe that underneath it all, we are all just one thing, and it can be really productive. And Craig's actually helped me a lot with that. I recently watched his film, The Great Dance, where there's a moment in the film where this extraordinary tracker connects so deeply with the deer, I think it was, Craig, or springbok,
yes.
no,
Kudu,
yeah,
kudu.
that he was tracking. And this man sprinted, I mean, ran 6 hours at a time in the blistering heat. And he liked the heat. This was the bit that blew my mind. He liked it. He said, it makes me a better tracker. The hunt becomes more productive the hotter it is, until he got to the point, and Craig's going to jump in the minute I get this wrong, but that he fully was one with this creature. And in that moment, and it's all caught on film, I don't know how Craig did this, to be honest, because it must have been very challenging to keep up. But the moment he fully connected with this animal, the animal just stopped and surrendered itself to him. And there was no urgency, there was no fear on either side. And he just threw his spear and you threw another spear, and you saw the animal saying, "This is okay. I'm okay with this. I want this too." And that really, really touched me. It was really kind of what's available to us as a humanity, as a consciousness. If we get out of the idea of separation and fear, I don't think there's any fear that's intrinsically built into the system. I think it's all there for us the moment we let go of our separation. And as I shared with him after I saw it, what a long way from that we've come to the abattoirs of today and the violence we see against animals, and how much we could all benefit if we started to learn these old ways. Craig, I'm sure you've got some things to say about that. I probably butchered your beautiful masterpiece of a film, but that's something I definitely got from it.
You actually explained it extremely well. I mean, this was quite a long time ago. So this was in 1998, which is now, 27 years ago, in the central Kalahari of Botswana. And we were very privileged to spend long periods of time with these three master trackers from the Ko and Klikwe language groups. And the idea was to try to film this chasing hunt, which had not been filmed before, and it was kind of near impossible. And we were very fortunate to be able to eventually film it and witness it. But as you say, that was the most extraordinary thing to see, was a person who's firstly able to move away from the physical tracks, because as you say, he was connected to that animal in his body. So he could move away from the physical tracks and just follow that animal in the thick bush. He had 99% of the time, he had no visual sight of the animal, but he could feel exactly where it was. And then he spoke afterwards about this idea of the hunter becoming the hunted, this tremendous sense of oneness, and you actually like killing yourself in the process. And it was just, at the time, very difficult to understand, but we spent years editing and trying to understand this, and it was a very profound lesson that speaks to exactly what you're talking about. I mean, obviously, most of us humans are very self-conscious. It's hard not to be. But the beauty in understanding that we really are, at some mysterious level, one living form is very liberating and very powerful. And certainly, my time spent in the Central Kalahari showed me that in a very powerful, visceral way.
Beautiful. One of the, I'm going to just quickly say, Ánde, because it relates to an experience that both Craig and I had separately with you, which was very, very exciting and nourishing. So the one aspect of creation that I have always struggled with are mosquitoes. So I live here in Brazil, and let me tell you, when I hear that sound at night buzzing around my head, I don't become the best version of myself, let's put it like that. And I go on the hunt. And I was sitting with Ánde, and he said quite a similar thing, in fact. And I'm going to let Ánde share the whole story because it's fabulous. But I hope at the culmination of this story, he will bless us with the same yoik that he blessed both Craig and I with, that I believe he was gifted as a result of his clearing this level, which I am yet to clear, of my resistance to the mosquito. So maybe, Ánde, you could share a little bit with us about your mosquito yoik and how you got it.
Yeah, I have been thinking about the mosquitoes because I really enjoy the sound. So to me, it's almost like this most beautiful micro saxophone that comes there, and then I used to think that every musician shall be paid. And this particular musician wants a little drop of blood. So then I'm
That's great.
then I used to give that blood. I say that, okay, this micro concert, it's worth a little drop of blood, so you can have that
That's great.
drop of blood. And I have been listening to because we have very many mosquitoes in our area. So the most dense places can be so that it's hard they get into your nose, and it's hard to close your eyes because they are they are everywhere. And when my wife and I we were starting to date, then I took and introduced her to my favorite mosquito place, which is so filled by sound. Um,
That was a bold move, Ánde. That was a bold move.
Yeah. Yes.
Don't try that at home. Yeah.
Yeah, don't try that. I tried that at home. So she used to have some funny stories about that little trip. So the mosquito yoik has a poem. It says that it takes a fragment of a mystery that we have, like that the reindeers, they're always going towards the wind. And we don't know exactly why, but we suspect that then they will get the scent of the lynx and the wolf and some predator that is there in front of them, that they are able to read the information that the wind will bring to you. And then the yoik says that the daughter herself, she is pushing the reindeer herd. So she's coming from backwards. And I'm still today, I'm so fascinated that, because now research tells us that it's the female mosquito that is the one that needs the blood. For her offspring. So how on earth did they then say that it was the daughter herself? And then the mosquito sort of takes the microphone and says that I sting you because blood is so sweet. I sting you because it's through this little sting that you notice that you are alive.
Right.
But the day when the crows become white, then I'm done with my task, which is to guarantee the continuance of life. And it goes like this. que están con dale, dale, voy a te que te le que Muhtadan beiveko Karjacesko Tecetalelengergan Takilemesa Teelin Jatka Showa Jatka Showa so that is the mosquito.
So great, so great. It reminds me, it took me back to also years and years ago when I was up on the border with Namibia and South Africa on the Great Karip, the Orange River. And we occasionally, I don't know if you probably get the same thing, Ánde, we get these giant swarms of midges, millions upon millions of midges, and they're so thick they actually block out the sun. And I was just drawn onto that landscape to see what it was like. And you have to wear something over your head, like a net, otherwise you inhale everything. But they're still biting you everywhere, and it's pretty difficult. And there's not a single person. Everybody's left the landscape. And I was thinking, is there a way to somehow get past the feeling of these animals biting and the annoyance and everything? And I was doing this land art. I was doing this 30-foot giant snake I was creating on the ground, and I was struggling and struggling and struggling, and then eventually, I don't quite know how, but I managed to get into a space where I was absolutely fine with those millions of midges. And I think it's similar to what you're experiencing, but you are actually expressing this love for these small animals that seem to be very annoying, but are actually critical for the survival of everything. We rely on all these small animals for all the biodiversity that's needed to run this planet. And I think it's just absolutely amazing that you know, in your culture, you have this yoik for this small animal that people don't like. It's just such a powerful message. And we can laugh about it and it's fun and everything, but still, I think it's very, very important that we realize how important all these small creatures actually are.
Yeah, I used to ask my students when I'm teaching. And then I used to throw them into an example. I used to say that there is a mosquito on the window here. And I have a pair of tweezers so that I catch the mosquito. And then I say that if I drag a leg out of that mosquito, is it okay? And it's an interesting example because we don't have any legislation that would protect the mosquito. In contrast, if it was an animal, if I drag a leg out of an animal, then it would be a punishable crime. But in this example, we don't have any legislation that would protect the mosquito, and that therefore the example is very intriguing because some of the students will then typically say that well, when it's not forbidden, then it must be legal, so it's okay. And then you have the other part of, because then I used to ask the students, does such a little being have any integrity that I can't violate? Can I do that because I just can do that physically? or is there something that you can't violate with such a little being as well? And then we used to have the other part of the student group that then will tend to protect. So it's a nature law then that you have that the mosquito by nature has something that you can't violate, and then some of my students used to say that you are used to pathologize me. That they say that if you do that, then you are pretty sick in your head if you do that to a mosquito. And then I used to nuance that and ask the students, but if I'm a scientist doing some research on mosquitoes, is that okay then to do that? So then we used to have this ethical discussions where I have this my personal position is that both insects and also plants have some core of integrity that if you shall violate that integrity, then there must be sort of a just cause to do that. That you can't, for example, just cut a tree because you can. There must be a justifiable reason to do that, and that also goes for violating insects. So I'm fascinated by that because I have learned. I have been looking into the ethics of insects. So I have learned that there is something that is called splatometer. A splatometer is that you put a kind of plate in front of a car, and then you drive the car over a distance with a given speed, and then you count how many insects you are splatted there. And the finding is that near highways, the insect population is much smaller, and so is the plants, that they don't grow as much near roads as they do in a further distance of the road. So there are some macro implications there that we haven't truly mapped, but what I think will start from that we value each piece of life, and because we have all these human capabilities, we can kill that, this, and that. So therefore, we are also we are also obliged to reflect and have just causes for using our capabilities of different kind towards our fellow beings.
That's really beautiful. And the yoik, I think it's the first time I've been healed by a mosquito, to my knowledge. I'm sure they've healed me in other ways in the past. It's a couple of small things I'd like to share. I remember once I was in an ayahuasca ceremony, and I've shared this with Craig, and I went outside, and it was a daytime ceremony, and I was in a very, 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 very challenging experience. And to say the least, and I was covered in insects, some of which were mosquitoes, and I was really uncomfortable about the fact, but I wasn't really in my right mind, obviously. I suppose I was in some ways in my right mind, not in my usual mind. And then this and this very soothing voice came to me, much clearer than any of the voices I hear in my day-to-day life, and said, I am the mother, and if you allow me to, these are my aspects, these are part of me, these insects, these beings, and I'm working through them to extract from you the poison that you're carrying. But there's going to be some pain involved in that, to your mind, to your senses, to your physical senses. But if you allow me to, the medicine will far outweigh any of the pain that you're experiencing. And so I did surrender because I was very deep in this experience. I actually physically, it was tangible to me that they were extracting things from me, which I was holding, which weren't beneficial. And it taught me this very deep lesson, which is that the whole of reality is actually there to support us, but not in ways that our separate mind always understands. So that helped me a lot. I still forgot when I get bitten at night by a mosquito and it's 3 a.m. and I want to get to it. But that voice is still there. It's just quieter in those moments. And the second thing I'd like to share was that the first, I suppose, spiritual learning I ever really was drawn to was when I was at law school. And I was extremely fortunate because there was a professor called Ronald Dworkin, who was a true genius. And he was a visiting professor at the university I was at in jurisprudence, the philosophy of law. And he explained his position on what you've just touched upon, which is there's an intrinsic value to life that we can't quite understand. We can't quite put our finger on it. So the examples he gave were toward euthanasia and abortion. And he said, from his perspective at least, the reason that we struggle with these concepts is that underneath it all, beyond all reason, there is this intangible value. And in the case of, from his perspective, and I might be wrong, it was 20 years ago, but from what I remember, he explained that the intrinsic value of the life of the person who's at the end of their lives has to be weighed against the intrinsic value of the extinguishment of a life. And the same thing with abortion. And that's how, the idea, the concept of relativity can come into those big questions. But the example that he gave that resonated, I think, most with me was he asked us the question like you've asked your students, if I were to get a machine that was capable of replicating a Picasso or a Monet or some incredible work of art, and it was done at the same time using it, and it was impossible to tell between the two, and if I was to tear them both up, would there be a difference to you emotionally watching me do that? And of course, we all felt strongly that, it would for some reason be much more of a tragedy for you to destroy this piece. And he said, why do you think that is? And we all came with this sentiment that when it comes to those levels of creation, there's a force behind the creation which is not quantifiable in monetary terms or in any sort of mind-based value system. It's beyond that. Something came through that person which just has a value. And that value,
good catch,
again, goes beyond the human mind. Thanks, brother. And I think that's really interesting that you take your students to that place when it comes to these micro life forms that Craig always talks about, which are the building blocks of life itself, even down to the plankton in our oceans, which are being destroyed by the frequencies that we are bathing our planet in, whether it's Wi-Fi or 5G or whatever else. That's all proven now. But there's this feeling that it's kind of insignificant. And it's not at all. It's part of the plan. It's part of this grand organism of which we are all a part. But it's easy without people like you and Craig for us to forget the significance of these things because we were given these enormous powers as human beings. And I think if we could all just quiet down, maybe spend some time with you up in the Arctic Circle in the winter one day and start to contemplate upon the subtle aspects of the creation and the beauty in that, the world would be a completely different experience. I think we'd all be much better off for it. So anyway, thank you for sharing what you did. It really touched my heart. And then I'd like to also reference, I'm not going to expect you or press you to sing any more yoiks. Of course, Craig and I would both love it, but one of the moments in our gathering, which I'm going to bring us on to now, which was the most powerful for me among so many very, very powerful experiences, was when you first met our San representative, Lydia, in the reception of Quad 2. And for everybody listening, our whole gathering, the Origins Gathering, was structured around the original lineage of humanity, which are the San people. They're our common ancestral thread. And there's something so profound and ancient and delicate and precious about all aspects of their culture and the representatives of it, like Lydia and her family. And you, I think, just arrived Ánde, and she was just standing there. And the reason I reference this is I got a front row seat to what you've been talking about on this call and how you approach reality, because I saw you meet her, and instead of the normal societal expectation of a shake of the hand, or you just broke into the most powerful yoik I've ever, forget yoik, one of the most powerful chants that I've experienced. And just to watch these two representatives of nature, one from the extreme north and one from the extreme south, connect in that way, everybody in the room, just everybody closed their eyes. There were tears in people's eyes because you touched that intrinsic value that Ronald Dawkins taught me about. You just touched it and connected everybody, and it was so special. So I'd like to hear from you about what was going through, I don't want to say your mind, but what was that experience for you when you first met Lydia?
Yeah, it was a very wonderful moment. I think about some yoiks are traditional, so that I have grown up with and learned and trained a lot. And then at some stage in my life, new yoiks started to appear, landing like a bird on my shoulder, and then singing into my ear, and then we would have a negotiation there. Am I the one that can give you physicality? So if I can give you physicality, you match with my voice, and so let's build a team then. And this yoik is the Tromsø Island yoik. Late, I have been thinking more about that as I have experienced that many times. Then that, so I used to think now about yoiks that they are autonomous beings. That this yoik has landed on me, and then we have a negotiation, and our contract then is that the yoik provides me with the melodiosity, the poetry, and I'm the one who then deliver the physicality. And so I'm very thankful every time that happens. But I have learned that or thought more about that, because that's how I also think about ideas. Every idea that I get, I think that is a little bird that lands on me. And then me and the idea are having a negotiation that am I the one that can bring you, give you wings so that you can fly and that you can be realized. So this yoik was of that nature, and it's interesting because it belongs to a tradition that differs slightly from the tradition that I have grown up with. So it is a kind of echo from this area where I live, Tromsø Island, because here the Samis who were living they were, because of the national politics between Norway and Sweden, they were Swedish citizens and they were using these lands as summer lands. So then they were excluded from these lands. So it's their yoiks that now fly, and one of them landed on me, and it's the Tromsø Island yoik. So I thought that when I met Lydia and her husband, that the best way to introduce was to introduce the space where I come from, Tromsø Island. So the Tromsø Island yoik also has a little poem saying that Tromsø Island, the jewel of the north. When time was winter, then she was so elegantly dressed in snow white. No wonder that the aurora was yoiking her so intensively. When time was summer, the rainbow was her jewelry. No wonder that the polar ocean was caressing her so gently. Tromsø Island, the jewel of the north, and it goes like this. Romsa sullo chayoloi Tavi mail megialule yogo Talvina ikeleinu ranjoloi Gaban gaban chingadan Audo go sahosot no yo ikole jidan na solo chayoku Asenaike ilan unne chingadan yogo areve tauki sola yonle yogo. So then I thought that is the best way to introduce oneself, to take the space to tell your context, as you are visiting a space that belongs to some other people.
You know, as you were singing, a bird landed on my shoulder, Ánde, and whispered something in my ear, which is that people often ask with the World Tribal Alliance, what the point of it is. And Craig knows I always find it hard to give an answer because the whole platform is beyond what any one human mind I feel is capable of understanding. But I think you've just given a perfect example of what the point of this thing is, which is that there is a different way of approaching everything. And you, in your culture, your culture has endowed you with the ability to show up to reality in a different way, to the point that when you meet somebody, instead of having a mind-based, programmed, fairly bland exchange, you endow everybody with just these incredible vibrations and this healing just from a quick, what would otherwise just be a hello. And when you sing, for anyone listening who has the question of what's the point of the WTA, it's that. There's nothing more than that. It's the tone of your voice, which is so ancient, carries healing, which is beyond my pay grade to understand. But it's so precious, and it's people like you and our other elders that have hung on and protected these ancient flickering flames for the rest of us to benefit from in a quite inhospitable climate. So yeah, it's just so incredibly beautiful. I just really want to thank you, because like, just listening, I mean, I can understand why it's nice to spend time in your culture, because when you're not in silence, you get blessings like that. When you do open your mouth, it's definitely worth it for the rest of us. Craig, maybe I know that Ande's yoiks really affected you, so I'd love to hear from you about that.
I was really taken by surprise. The first time I was just sitting there quite relaxed under those trees, and Ande was talking, and then he started yoiking, and I just felt this massive rush of emotion. And I found myself weeping, and I didn't quite know exactly what was going on, but I think it was that some kind of old remembering, but it was deeply, deeply moving. And to hear, I'd heard yoiking before, but to hear it from Ande right there live was just hit me so very, very strongly. And I could have listened for hours if he'd carried on. And I think you're right, Dominic, that this, Ande and all the other elders brought a kind of unified wisdom to in this World Tribal Alliance gathering that was truly remarkable. It was not something that you could easily describe, but you could feel the power of it, the healing nature of it, and how they all worked together in this very beautiful way to bring this wisdom out. And it just solidified in my mind how absolutely critical indigenous wisdom is for the survival of our species and, the well-being of this planet. It's just really hit home so hard.
Thanks, Craig. And
Thank you so much.
I think we all, yeah. When you guys sing, it's really just silences everybody. It's so ancient. One day there's a piece of wisdom that you shared, which I'm going to be exploring on future conversations on this channel, which has to do with getting out of one's head and the upper extremities and grounding down into what's happening right now and making that your reality and being deliberate and conscious about what we're choosing to create from this present moment. And that was your Only the Foot story. So I love, you're such a fabulous storyteller. I know that you don't really mind, but I'd love if you could share with us how that came about and what that means to you and how you apply that in your everyday life.
Yeah, I have this a gift in life that I remember very well. So I remember pretty early in my life. So I used to be able to tell stories to my schoolmates from our first school day, what happened and who was sitting here and what the teacher said and so on. This story, maybe the foot story, is from the time when I'm 2.5 years old. And I come from a different time, and I'm so grateful for being from a different time. Have seen many things technologically what has happened. I remember the first car I saw, and how amazing that was. So, in our area, then we didn't have water indoors. So we used to bring water in buckets from a well that was a little creek that was some 300-400 meters from our home. And this was winter, and I was outside playing, and then I found the track to the well. So I went there, and I had, of course, seen people when they were taking a little water out of the well. So it was a little bucket there, and I wanted to fetch some water to drink. But then the bucket became full, and it became so heavy, so I ended up in the well, and then I couldn't reach up to the edge of the ice anymore, and then I thought that the arms can't reach there, so maybe the foot. And I had this Sami that which is a kind of moccasin. So with the heel, I could get a little grip on the edge of the ice when I tried with the foot. So then I got a little grip, and then I managed to get to the edge, and managed to come back to life. I would have drowned there. So I came there running and crying, and my family was very shocked about the little one being so soaking wet. But I have always then in my life, when things become complicated, then I used to think that maybe the foot. So to turn the problem upside down, or turn it the problem on the side, and look at that from different angles. And what so this is a life-giving question. I wouldn't have been alive if I didn't have that question. Maybe the foot. So I have so deep respect for that question. It's my main ally in life. So then I used to think that maybe I'm looking at this problem in the wrong way. Maybe if I turn it this way or that way, and inside out, and oftentimes then I will be able to structure the problem that I have met maybe in 2-3 different ways, and find my way out of it. But every time I used to have this little 2.5-year-old person with me, asking that very question, and helping me out. So and I used to think that this is such a life-giving question, that I'm so happy to share that with people, so that they also can get use of something so strong and powerful.
It definitely had an effect on all of us. And Matthias shared when we were at the castle doing the healing, because it was such a place of immense historic pain. What he took from your lesson, and something that he's been teaching and I guess channeling for a long time, is that if you want to heal, then you have to use your heel. He even said maybe the foot, and put it in the floor now and say, we're going to create from here now. We're not going to keep creating from here. We're going to create a new timeline, and we're going to heal by putting our foot in the ground and saying maybe it's the foot and not the mind that needs to take us forward into a new paradigm, which was very powerful for a lot of the elders who, of course, have carried the burden, I don't believe they do anymore, of their tradition and their lineage's trauma, which in some cases, and actually in all cases, is extreme. So it was interesting to see how that teaching of yours rippled across various different of our elders and our ambassadors and their experience. So thank you for sharing it. It's really beautiful. And Craig, I'm curious about, I'm going to put you on the spot now, so I apologize, but I'm sure you found yourself in situations where you were drowning in a well or something similar. Maybe you can share a little bit about how, because I know I'm quite familiar with a lot of the things that you've created, and you found yourself in some incredible scenarios in your life that you've somehow managed to get out of. Maybe you could share one of those for us just to add a bit of spice, because I know people aren't familiar. Craig has swum with 15-foot Nile crocodiles and great whites, and it's always fascinating to me how you, because I know you very well, and you know you have this gentleness to you and this quietness to you, and yet you put yourselves in the most extreme have put yourself in some of the most extreme situations. So maybe you could share a little bit with us about some of those situations.
Yeah, what comes to mind, thanks, Dom, is a situation where I was diving on the west coast of South Africa. It was quite a while back. And I'm very interested in little caves and all the creatures that live in the caves. And in this cave were these enormous abalone that had been polished by the water and the sand. And they were these giant kind of silver discs. And I was fascinated by them. And it was a very turbulent day. And I went into the cave to try and get some photographs of them. And the swell pushed me, but normally it's quite safe. But what I didn't realize is this cave went deep in and then didn't close off. It actually opened back up again. So it was like getting sucked into a bottleneck, and it jammed my body. The swell jammed my body into that cave so tightly, and I was probably about 5 to 6 meters underwater, breath holding, just driving on a single breath, jammed me in there, and I literally could not move my body. And obviously it was a terrible feeling, kind of much like Ande's young self, stuck in that freezing water. But I had, one breath of air, and I was stuck in that cave, and I literally couldn't move. And I knew that the only way I could survive was to wait until that swell came back the other way and hopefully was powerful enough to pop me back out. So if I panicked or if I tried to struggle in any way, I was finished because I'd use up all my oxygen. And I just basically was stuck like a cork in that cave, and just trying to calm my mind, and just feeling the edge of death just coming closer and closer. And thank goodness, just right at the end of my breath, that massive swell came back and popped me straight out, and I came to the surface, and it was like being born again. It was an extraordinary experience, and terrifying, but luckily short-lived. So it didn't, not too much of the horror came to me. But I find it interesting that I have dived with these, supposedly very dangerous big animals, but it's always been the ocean herself that has actually put me near to death. I've never been so badly threatened by an animal, a crocodile or a great white or whatever, that I felt now I'm very close to dying. It's always been with the ocean. So yeah, I think that you do get taught enormous lessons by that, and I'm certainly much, much more careful these days. But I've kind of had my 9 lives, so I have to be very, very careful.
Well, and I think maybe that has a little bit to do with your state of mind when you find yourself in these situations that allows you to escape them somehow. There's another story as you were talking, which came, by the way, thank you for sharing that one. That would be my idea of the most terrifying thing that could possibly happen. I have a big phobia of caves for some reason. I think my ancestors were, well, I don't think they were miners in Cornwall. So any sort of closed space near the ocean terrifies me for some reason. Maybe that's why whenever we try and go diving, it never quite happens. I'm not sure. I will conquer it one day. But there's another story that, I mean, there's so many that you've shared, but there's one with a whale that really touched me. Maybe you could share that with us, where the whale came close and felt threatened by your presence.
Yeah, for sure. So what happened was it was very, very murky water. And we were in the kelp forest, and unbeknownst to me, there was this massive southern right whale right inshore, very unusual. And it was kind of, I think, it was in the kelp because it enjoyed the tactile nature of the kelp. It was almost using it to feel the memories of its mother. It was a young animal, but a large animal. And I got too close to it because the visibility was so bad. And it got a hell of a fright. Like one might get a fright if suddenly there was a mouse right next to you. And it lashed out with its tail in that fright. And the force of the tail just somersaulted me backwards. If I'd got hit by the tail and I was probably half a meter from being hit, I would have definitely been dead. It's like being hit by a car. And I knew the animal was like, just got a fright. It didn't mean any ill harm. So the animal then moved a little bit further out, and then I was aware, okay, there's a whale here. And I was very careful to negotiate, and I went near the rock and then went not a safe distance from that animal and just hung in the forest. And then I was just making like a very gentle rumbling sound to let that animal know where I was. And what was so fascinating, that whale then came right close to me and was almost within touching distance. And it was definitely trying to say, look, I'm sorry, I got a fright. Now I know you're there and everything, it's fine. And I was able to get these amazing shots of its tail in the kelp. And it was completely calm. It was absolutely fascinating. Of course, they're quite intelligent. It was just a wonderful experience. But obviously, one has to actually be very careful of whales. They can be extremely dangerous, but they don't mean harm, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I'm now, you just got to be, it's such a strange place for a whale to be so close inshore. So I try now to, look above the water quite a bit just to make sure I don't have an encounter or scare an animal like that again.
Thanks for sharing that. Amazing. And one of the things that I love so much about that story, which I know about because of the book Amphibious Soul, which you narrate in the Audible version, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing to engage with. I wholeheartedly recommend it. One of the elements of it was that, which you just briefly touched upon, was that you made an attempt to communicate vocally with the whale, and it somehow understood that attempt. And maybe that was the thing that disarmed it, which I found really fascinating, that you kind of not imitated, but of your own volition created this wonderful sound, which it understood somehow.
Yeah, well, the water was so murky. That's the only way you can really communicate. And in fact, when the wind gets up and they can't communicate, then they will slap or jump, and those big thumps will communicate to the other whales. So they also use that physical means of making sounds to communicate when conditions are more difficult.
Yeah, I just love that you took it upon yourself to do that. Most people wouldn't
It's
even
intuitive,
think to do
yeah.
it. Yeah, it's amazing. It's inspiring. And so I've got one more question for you both, which is the same. And I'll start with Ánde. What was the experience down in South Africa which you took away from the gathering? Which was the most powerful experience, or the one that really stayed in your heart, if there is one in particular?
Yeah, I really enjoyed because I'm an I'm a person who used to read different things. I read the atmosphere, and I read the movement, how people move, and I read the colors that are there. So so my most profound experience was to read the atmosphere that had so many voices in it. So like if if I take that back to me and my neighbor uh, having this coffee break in all silence. So when you read all the different voices of the minds that are there. So it was such a beautiful, so many beautiful thoughts and so many beautiful presences there. So it was like to be in a place where you have so many beautiful songs sung by so many beautiful voices, both very deep voices and very light voices, and so that was uh, the thing that really um, made me a little different person than I was when I came.
That's a really great way of putting it. Various people who have been have shared similar sentiments that and I include myself in this, that for some reason my setup is different now. I'm a slightly different creature now than the one that arrived at the gathering. I remember when some of the elders whose flight had been delayed arrived a little late, and we had Yube from the Amazon and Don Hipólito and his son Fernando from the Peruvian Andes. And they came straight off the flight, and they really wanted just to come and say hello to us before they went and retired to their rooms and freshened up. And these are they're both very, very sensitive individuals. And they came and they both shared with me after, what is this? What have I arrived at? What is this field of, like you said, colors and beauty? And what Don Hipólito said was that he's able to, well, he experiences reality in a slightly different way to most of us, in so much as he can sort of do an X-ray of people's hearts. And he just said, I just never seen so many open hearts before. It's just this wonderful blossoming of nature, to see all of these incredible souls so open and so receptive to what it is that we're all here for. And it's very interesting for me to hear that you had a similar experience. It was really something that I've never tasted before. Just this field of love, this field of, and also how each of the different elders carried this. It's all loving and it's all unified, but each had a different flavor that was so important and so delicious. It was like this amazing symphony or this tapestry. And that was also an important lesson, I think, for all of us, in so much as it's like an enormous, grand, cosmic jigsaw puzzle, and we need all the pieces. You can't do it without all the pieces. They all need to be there. And the sum is greater than the parts. It's just this wonderful thing that's very hard to put into words, as I'm sure everyone can tell. But I do feel, and so did everyone that I've spoken to, that we've all come back as a result of being exposed to those wonderful colours, different and better and more empty and more sensitive. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's definitely resonates with me.
So, I mean, what was extraordinary was to be with the elders from every corner. It felt like every corner of the earth, from up in the Arctic where Ande is to the Peruvian shamans from the Andes, the Mamos, the wonderful Awatia from Aotearoa, New Zealand, the Hawaiian elder, so many incredible medicine people from the Amazon. I mean, it was just, and all the African elders. It was just quite remarkable. Lakota, wonderful Lakota elder. And the amazing thing was to feel that love for Mother, the love for the beating heart of this planet, for our great Mother who's kept us alive from the beginning, and all these small creatures that Ande so eloquently brings to life. To know that this is the lifeblood, the life force that allows us to live, and to be with people who understood that at the deepest level and realized how critical that was to care for and love that beating heart of what we're all about. So that was deeply, deeply moving. And then to feel the love that everyone had for each other, and the care. You see the Corona Queen caring for the San Elder, and everybody caring for each other. It was really remarkable. And then the love for everybody else was very, very special. It really was, and especially when you've seen what those people have gone through, and how dominant white oppressive culture has what it's done to them, and then to feel still that love despite that is just absolutely remarkable. Especially as a South African person, it's just quite extraordinary. A very, very high level of consciousness. So yeah, it was just everybody, I think, still. There was a lot going on. It was fascinating, very powerful, and quite terrifying, as you felt as much as, I mean, I felt only a little bit of what you had to endure, because to organize something like that with so many spiritual people, and to have, I was terrified how can this all come together? And yet you somehow managed to pull it off, a real miracle against all odds. And the toll that took on you and many of the others was also so powerful to feel and witness, and then to form this friendship in that crucible of adversity in many ways and beauty was a pretty profound experience. And many friendships formed, and many contacts now, and people have made friendships and alliances through this. So yeah, it's just, I was pinching myself the whole time. Is this now actually real? And it was extreme. So yeah, incredible that you managed to pull this off, Dom, with the team and then elders, that you responded to this and came from the corners of the earth and had all that energy even after flying across the world. I actually don't know how it happened. It really was a miracle.
I think that makes a lot of us, not just two of us, because there were moments with it where, because it was so much bigger than any one of us, there was a celestial hand that was truly tangible throughout. And if I or one of the team forgot to do something, somehow it got done. And it was just this magical thing. I mean, the veil was incredibly thin. I don't think, Ánde, that you're aware of one anecdote that I'll tell very briefly. So Craig, as I'm sure everybody knows and can feel, is incredibly sensitive. And in those moments where I was at breaking point, because it was a very intense experience, I'd get a phone call from him or a knock on the door. And in one of those experiences, he came to kind of pull me out of a situation. And for some reason, I'd shared a story about a very deep experience I'd had, a sort of an astral experience with a scorpion. And so Craig, held the space for me to share this story. And then I happened to be a Scorpio, it so happens. Craig left, and as he left, he happened upon one of the largest and certainly the most deadly scorpions native to Africa that was right outside my bedroom, and called me and said, "My God, this is incredible. I've just experienced this huge scorpion and so powerful." And the stinger was sort of tucked away, and he shared this picture with me. It was amazing to hear that after I just shared this very personal story. The next morning, Craig invited me to go tracking with him on the beach and swim because I needed to wash off some stuff down in the ocean. And he said, "Oh, let's go up here for a bit. Let's just go up here and wait for Pippa." So we went up onto the dune, and I could tell there was a cord that was pulling at him. There was something that was pulling him. And he said, look at this, look at this. And he said, "Just, no, come here, come here." And he goes around, there's a small bush. He said, "There it is." And he found a trail of a scorpion right there under the bush. And he said, "Oh my God, this is incredible. Put your hand on it." I put my hand on it, and I had a very, very powerful, nourishing experience of being there with that track. And it's almost an unnerving experience because this creature has been there very recently and you can feel it. And it was really wonderful. Anyway, so to tie a knot on this story, 2 days later, the elders that came as a symbol of the vibration of this gathering and of who these people are, each of them, under the guidance of the Korana Queen, Queen Eloise, took it upon themselves to wash all of our feet. So we had, 80 people probably present, and these very, very elevated elders got on their hands and knees and washed and massaged our feet. And it was not an experience that any of us will forget, of course. Just the extreme humility. It was really, really breathtaking. Very emotional for a lot of people, including myself. And I was the last person, or one of the last people to go. And it was Lydia that was charged, the San Elder, with doing something to my feet, some sort of massage. And she did it with such love and such care. It was as if I was the first person, And she looked into my eyes, and we shared about a 2-minute exchange, kind of a non-verbal, ancient, beyond word exchange. And that was that. Anyway, so then she came to me to finish the story a couple of days later. And her husband translated, and he said, "I must talk to you." And I said, "Oh, what is it?" And so that her husband, Isaac, translated that 2 nights ago, after she had helped me and given me this foot massage, a scorpion had come to her in her dream and told her that I was now connected to the spirit of the scorpion, I guess the collective spirit of the scorpion. And the scorpion instructed her to make this bracelet for me with this scorpion on it. And she very delicately put it on my wrist with incredible care and preciousness. And for me, it was, as you can all imagine, I'm sure, the most enlightening experience maybe of my life, one of them, because there was no veil. It was just this very clear confirmation from the Big Mother that she's absolutely aware of me very deeply, and that she cares, and that she's borne witness to what it took to pull this gathering off. And that was very, very deeply reassuring for me. So just huge thanks to Craig for showing up and being a part of that story. And there's many, many, many more stories, of course, that will come out over the coming weeks and months. So what I'd like to, if Ánde will humor me and us, I can't think of a better way to finish this exchange than for Ánde to sing one more yoik, and then we'll just quietly close this conversation. Ánde, would you honor us and humor us with one more yoik?
Yes, sure. And because it was also very, very powerful that all the birds were taking part in our conversation. And it reminds me of so there have been some moments in my life where things have been a little bit complicated, and then I have had this which we in Sami we call that atjakas, and that is the moment right before you fall asleep, where you have this very powerful dreams. So then I was dreaming that 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 um, that I was a tree, and then all the birds came and they discussed the complication that I was in the midst of, and they had different takes. They were sort of talking what my next step would be. And they didn't agree about what my next step would be. So I heard a lot of different takes on my complication there, and it was so fruitful, and I was thinking about that when I was sitting under the trees, and we were talking, and the birds were also talking there, and I got this vision that the gathering opened a lot of new streams of inspirations that will be carried by these birds, and that will be carried by the people who were there under the trees, the young ones who were present there, the elders who were present there, and people from all corners of the world, and all different situations. So I was brought back to this. So smile, Mr. Bashanasti, Wailach Bonolomo Daverok. No 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 no. No 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 no. No 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 no. No 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 no. Ranes Meister Pascha im Weislundon Olomo Ilugaunet Teo no 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 no.
Beautiful. Thank you. Wow.
Thank you so much, Ánde. All that's left to say is huge thanks to you both for sharing and for coming to South Africa and for trusting us to look after you and for sharing everything that you've worked your whole lives to become channels for. Thank you so much. And then lastly, for me to thank Brahmarishi Mahanji for making all of this possible. This is all his vision, and it's a wonderful, spectacular vision at that. So thank you to Mahanji.
Thank
Wonderful.
you to him.
Thanks so much, guys. Very special. Bless you.